So tonight's draw and chat session, we'll be talking about Black Widow and advanced and misplaced notes. So if you haven't seen the Black Widow movie, I will be doing spoiler discussion about it. So if you don't want to get spoiled on it, go watch the movie and come back and visit me. Whoever's watching, and then throw the link in. If anybody wants to actually jump in the stream to talk about it, you can. Link. I'm just finding out that artist Stephen Hickman passed away today. Rest in peace, Fairmont Farms. He's never seen his work. Look him up. A lot of fantasy art. There's the link to the StreamYard. You don't have to come in with the camera. I know not everybody wants to be on screen. If you want to come in and talk, you just come in without a camera and you can use your mic. But let's talk about this. I'm going to draw while I'm talking. Here's the thing. If I'm ever doing a stream dedicated to a movie or show, it's not going to be one that beats up on it if it's dedicated. Now, if it's just a general draw and chat session and it's me and my friends talking about stuff, then yeah, we may bash stuff. But so if you came here to, see me bash on Black Widow or anything like that, you came to the wrong place. That's just not right. Life's too short to spend it being an asshole. So for the most part, I enjoyed the movie. Like many people, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years later than it should have been. But that's not something we can control, so we just have to take what we get. Sometimes, and what they gave us, I think, was pretty enjoyable. That's not to say it didn't have some problems. There was a lot of there were a lot of plot conveniences, things that worked out because they needed it to work out, not because it would have made sense, but just to keep the story moving forward. Timeline-wise, it looks like this takes place shortly after the events of Civil War. So we see Natasha on the run. From General Ross, and that's really where it kicks off. The opening scene is Ross trying to capture Black Widow and how she evades him. One of the nice things is they show her, several steps ahead of Ross. Ross thinks he has her cornered somewhere in the U.S. and he's sending in troops to get her. She's not even in the country, but she's talking to him on the phone. They don't do this. So I'm glad they didn't make her seem stupid, which is something that some movies will do. So, glad to see that. I'm going to get my bearings down where I want it to be in this drawing as I go. So obviously she has evaded Ross because she's not even in the same continent. It's a nice kickoff, I think, to the movie. Having her outsmart General Ross, or I don't think I guess he's Secretary of Defense Ross at this point in Civil War. Really some government bureaucrat now, not a general. And then she is she's going to ground in Norway, and there's this character named Mason in the show who's like her gadget guy, the one that hooks her up with equipment and stuff while she's doing illicit work and running, staying around. I don't know if they ever say his name in the show. I had to look it up in the cast credits to make sure what he was called. Um, but there's some nice chemistry with this guy. He seems very likable. Um, and I don't know what kind of history that him and Natasha have, but it's obvious from the way they portray the roles that there's some history there. Howdy, whoever's watching. Seeing there's a couple people picked up. Again, I'll put the link to the StreamYard if anybody wants to come in. You don't have to use your camera. Just come in with a mic if you want to talk about this stuff directly. Anyway, I'm just kind of doing a recap, kind of off the top of my head. So she goes to ground in Norway, and we also get. Oh, I guess I kind of missed the cold open. The cold open. It's kind of a Fast and Furious thing. This movie is about family. There's no doubt about that. That's the whole theme behind Black Widow getting together with all these people. But where that family comes from is that the movie opens up in Ohio, and when Natasha is a child, well, she's probably, I don't know, maybe 13 or so. It's hard. I don't know if they say her age, but let's say she's about 13, and she's got a sister that's 6, and her parents that are raising her. The whole thing ends up being a facade. It's Alexei and Melina are actually Russian spies. They were sent to the U.S. to get some technological intel, which plays in the theme of the movie later. Sorry. I rushed home to get here. Traffic was bad. So I had to quickly stuff my face and get everything set up. And still kind of frazzled. But anyway, her whole childhood was a farce. It turns out it was only 3 years. This whole covert family operation, the fake family. There's only 3 years in the con. Nose is covered there. Yeah. I'm trying to depict kind of a theme and scene from the movie that I particularly like. Again, the whole thing is this is about family, and what makes family. It's not a Dom Toretto thing. I haven't seen the Fast and Furious movies, but I know there's all those memes are floating around about family. So I guess we could consider this kind of Fast and Furious vibe. So they have to leave Ohio because they have Alexei has completed his mission. He has gotten the intel and gets the orders to fly out. Now this is one of the areas where we get some of the plot conveniences. They escape. He has a 2-engine Cessna stashed away somewhere nearby, and then take the family and fly off. And they fly from Ohio to Cuba. And I gave Wonder Woman 1984 a little bit of crap because they hop in that jet and they fly from the Museum of Modern Art or whatever it is in Washington all the way to Egypt. And in this one, they fly from Ohio to Cuba, where Alexei meets up with his Russian counterparts. But I actually clocked it out. Twin-engine Cessna. I don't know the exact model of plane that was in the movie, but planes of that type can fly about 900 nautical miles, and Ohio to Cuba is a little over 900 nautical miles. So, if you throw in some Gulf streams or some jet streams, maybe they could have done it. And we have to think that they landed somewhere because as they're escaping, Alexei is not inside the plane; he's hanging onto the wing. So when they land in Cuba, he is not hanging onto the wing. So I have to assume they landed at least briefly somewhere. Melina is wounded in the escape. So, when they land in Cuba, she's taken away for medical treatment. And Natasha and Yelena are taken by Dreykov, who's the villain of the movie, the main villain, to head off to the Red Room. And for Natasha, we understand that this is continuing training. She's already been trained. She's already been through the Red Room at least once. For Yelena, this will be the first time. She's only 6 years old. And this is kind of where I'm going with my scene here, because at the top I'm going to kind of draw the scene in Cuba where Natasha's trying to protect Yelena and keep her from being taken away. And then as they meet again when they're adults, there's a scene that we'll talk about, the family scene. And the drawing will make more sense as we get there. Sorry. I am really frazzled. I'm tired. It's been a busy week or so. I'm also working on refinancing my house. So I've been doing all kinds of paperwork and working on the yard. And then doing stream with Comic Jam. So just a little tired. So anyway, so that's the cold open for the movie, and it goes into a montage where they start rolling the opening credits. And this is one of the things that I really am surprised that Marvel tackled. Even though they didn't go, like rated R or anything with it, some of the themes in the movie are very, very dark. So this whole thing where the Russians are taking kids and training them to be assassins and spies is a riff on like human trafficking. And this opening montage is just gut wrenching, and you can see the parallels to sexual human trafficking. And, it's a very dark theme that they don't really elaborate into it a lot, but wow. So it's a very adult themed movie, even if they may not lean into it once it gets going. It's the main theme of the movie is family, and not necessarily biological family. And I think that's, being adopted myself, I can relate to that. My family was not my biological family. They were the Cannons who raised me. So I can relate to that. Having an adopted sister and adopted brothers and all that, I can really show back. Mapping things out. Here's crosses the hydrophone from here. Anybody watching have any comments on the movie that they want to get into? If not, it's okay. We'll keep blabbering away. I'd love to talk to somebody about the movie, but nobody wants to talk. So after that opening montage, they take the girls away to the Red Room, and then part of the montage shows the human trafficking, and then bringing in other girls and women into this program, and then little flashes of the training and the missions. You get the sense that Dreykov is connected to several world leaders, including Clinton and um, not the current Russian president. Who's on before him? Yeltsin, Boris Yeltsin. So you see like photos of him with Yeltsin and Clinton and other world leaders. And you see the various widows and like captured photography from like missions or probably assassination attempts and other infiltrations and stuff like that. And then their fake Christmases, posing to make it look like they're celebrating Christmas as kids. You see them like indoctrinating the girls with cartoons and stuff like that to inculcate the stuff that they need to be able to do later as spies and assassins. Yeah, the whole playing on this human trafficking theme is just really dark. I'm surprised that Marvel went there. I'm glad they did. Especially for a PG-13 movie, this movie doesn't show any blood or anything. So the fact that they were able to tie Widow into such a dark theme is pretty cool. But that's really all we get as far as the Red Room, as far as the training, is that montage. And then we jump, I think it's like 22 years later, everybody's obviously an adult by now. So this is from the part in Cuba where they're getting ready to take the girls away to the Red Room. Natasha has been through the Red Room already, so she knows what's in for Elena, and she doesn't want to let her go. So she, pulls one of the soldiers' guns and threatens to shoot everybody, and she's trying to protect her sister Elena. And that's what I want to show, because there's a whole thing is this was a family construct. It wasn't real. Her parents were spies. They were doing a job. But there's a line in the movie that Elena says that it was real for me. And then later on in the movie, Natasha says it back. It was real for me too. And that's what I want to get, because you see this scene where she's trying to protect her sister, right? And if you didn't care, you wouldn't be doing that. So it was real for her. And the admission at the end where it was real for me too is a powerful statement for me. And again, I come from this as an adoptee, so I understand, real may not be biological. Certainly doesn't need to be biological. So, I don't really have the post. I tried to get, a decent capture of her trying to protect Elena, but the angles and the speed are so fast that it's hard to get a decent shot. So I just got some references, and I'll try and create kind of a pose, because she's got Elena kind of behind her back. I'm trying to figure out how to do that, but I did like this face. How am I going to do that? I need to put her on the side more. I need to move her over to the left. I think this. I can switch it. She had the gun in her left hand and was holding Elena behind her with her right hand, but I can just switch that for the purposes of the illustration. So let me try that. So if I put her head here. Kind of and Elena is smaller and shorter, obviously, back here. Sorry, as I try to think through this. I probably should have sketched this out in advance, so I wouldn't try to think it was all on stream, especially since I'm tired. um, anyway, let's see. We can jump ahead. So we jump ahead 22 years later, um, and that's when Natasha's on the run. So that catches you back up to where I accidentally started off. So she's in Norway now, right? And the introduction to Yelena in Russia, they cut over to that because that kind of sets up the first encounter for Taskmaster and Natasha. Move this way over. So they cut over to Russia, and you see the widows, the Russian widows, the Red Room widows, are after someone. You know, they have snipers on the roof, and they're waiting to get their shot. And apparently, the mark makes them. And Yelena turns out to be the team leader for this particular mission. So she, when the mark makes a run for it, she as team leader takes to the street to chase her down, while the other widows are, trying to follow in pursuit also. Peeking up behind, maybe. I think we're getting there. Shoulder hand upon Natasha. Well, this was an interesting thing too that a friend pointed out to me. She says, "Yeah, that young girl looks like Mila Jovovich," and it turns out that the one playing young Natasha is actually Mila Jovovich's daughter. I'm saying that. I'm not talking, am I? Dang it. Probably should have rescheduled the stream. My brain, body are frazzled. Where was I? Anyway, so Yelena is chasing down what turns out to be another widow that has managed to break her conditioning, and as she's being as she's trying to get away from Yelena, Yelena ends up killing her, but not before she exposes Yelena to some kind of neurotoxin that actually um, breaks Yelena out from the conditioning. So, she realizes she just killed somebody she knew. And it's really weird the way they did this, because the effects are um, like immediate. As if a widow is exposed to this gas, they're immediately freed from whatever the conditioning was. And it turns out that it's actually chemical in nature. It's not just psychological conditioning. There's actually some bio uh, augmentation to the conditioning, which this gas that she's exposed to frees the person from. So being exposed to this mist actually breaks her out of her program, as it were. So she takes up the vials and goes on the run, and of course the other widows from the other room start chasing her. She uses Black Widow's safe house in Budapest from the infamous Budapest story, with her and Widow and Clint Barton, Hawkeye. They send Taskmaster to retrieve the mist, or the agent that unlocks, the conditioning. And Yelena had actually sent that off to Natasha, who is staying in the safe house in Norway. And is it convoluted too much? A little bit. It's a spy story, so there's a lot of running around. You got to be careful not to, because this is young Natasha, so she doesn't have breasts yet, but she does have the start prepubescent kind of stuff. I'm not gonna try to show that. I like that. I need to actually show anything here. Let's see. Sister's holding a My Little Pony thing. Put that in there. Probably best if I just leave the face and maybe show her arms coming out. Like that. Just trying to reach for something. And then this hand. So she's holding a gun, threatening all the soldiers. Wow. That one down in the thing. So lower the hand and put the gun this way. Like I said, even though she's maybe 13 or so, or 12 or 13 in the show, she's not afraid to grab a gun. She's yelling at the soldiers in Russian. Quite like to see it. Just a 45 kind of. Not to pull up some reference here. We'll do it like that. Okay, so. Again, you're welcome to join me in the stream. Talk to me. Maybe you can keep my thoughts together. Or if there's something you'd like to talk about. So where we're at, we have Yelena's hiding in the safe house in Budapest, and we have sent the agent, the freeing agent, Mist, to Natasha in Norway, and the Red Room knows that Yelena has defected or gone AWOL, and she's got this mist, and they're not really interested in Yelena. They want the mist so they can prevent any other widows being freed from the program. So they send Taskmaster to get the mist. So Taskmaster ambushes uh, Scarlet in Norway, and he crashes into her vehicle on the bridge as she's driving to get gas for her generator. Um, jumbling my way through all this. Sorry. Brush. Medium. So that you get the when they do the fight, they show how like Taskmaster analyzes his opponents and mimic their moves. And as if you watch Taskmaster throughout the movie, because they do say that Taskmaster's a mimic and has all her friends, meaning Natasha's friends, fighting styles. So as you're watching throughout the movie, you can see Taskmaster doing stuff like Hawkeye would, doing stuff like Black Panther would, doing stuff like Black Widow would. So it's subtle, but if you're paying attention, you catch all these little things that they did to indicate Taskmaster's mimic abilities. But Taskmaster does get the better of Natasha. And they do show, during the fight where he's actually copying her moves, they're like fighting almost like a mirror in style. But then Natasha figures out that she's not there for her. He's there, or Taskmaster is there for the stuff that Elaine had sent to her. So she steals it out of the case, and she's still fighting him. And then Taskmaster kicks her off the bridge and into the water, retrieves the case, and then finds out that she had pulled all the stuff out of the case. So she got away. And Mason, so she heads to the safe house in Budapest, and that's where her and her sister meet up for the first time, and they don't trust each other, and a fight ensues. And it kind of comes to a stalemate, and they have to just agree to try, like, call truce and not keep fighting. But you're shown in this fight that Yelena is on par with Black Widow. She holds her own. It comes down to a point where they're like choking each other with a sheet. Okay, I got this messed up. Trying to figure out how to fix it. Yes, I'll have to darken in the space between them. Even though it's light in the shadow. Light. Just to correct the outlines a bit. The references aren't great. You know? And I keep saying it, but I am tired. But I scheduled the stream. Try and keep going. So once they've declared the truce and they figure out they have to trust each other, they're kind of a very tentative truce. The trust really isn't there. But the other widows have caught up to them, and they're interrupting the moment and start chasing them. So they have to escape from the other widows. And they do that by hopping on a motorcycle that Yelena had stashed nearby. And of course, Taskmaster is now chasing them too. And all hell breaks loose. This is when you see the scene in the movie where Taskmaster with the bow, he uses an explosive arrow to blow their vehicle up. And this is another one where one of the scenes where your knowledge of reality and how things work doesn't jive with what's going on in the movie, because when they blow up the car that Yelena and Widow and Scarlet are in, it goes upside down and goes down some stairs into a subway area or a mass transit system of some sort. I won't say it's a subway or a train. The car lands on its roof and slides. So obviously this is a stunt vehicle. It's got roll bars. This is one of those instances where you just look at it and go, "Oh, they're dead." And there's other parts in like when they're running away from the Black Widows in the Red Room. They hop onto a chimney stack and kick it away from the wall, and it falls down, and then Scarlet falls off of that, and you see her falling down like probably 5 stories and just hitting all kinds of crap on the way down. And you're just thinking, well, she's dead, or at the very least, she's crippled, for life. But of course, that would be the end of the movie, so that's not what happens. Obviously, that's just one of those things where it's a plot convenience that we need to show this that Widow's tough, and it's not realistic at all. But you just kind of roll with it. I wonder if I can do white out to soften that up. Maybe I'll just keep going and redraw this later when I'm awake. I like the idea. My execution is not great right now, and I apologize for that. I probably shouldn't try to be so exact, especially during the stream. So we'll just start loosening up, and we'll just start going to the lines. I'll try a better execution for inventory piece. We'll just consider this a warm-up, I guess. The Taskmaster follows him down into the subway system. You get the sense that Taskmaster's relentless. Yelena is pretty seriously injured in the crash, and she's bleeding. She wants to staunch the bleeding, obviously, but Natasha stops her because they can use that to their advantage. So they leave a bloody trail to like a grate that goes under the subway system. And, that's where the bloody trail ends. And Taskmaster follows that bloody trail to the grate and assumes, logically, that they've gone down into the grate. So Taskmaster follows the trail down there, which I assume they probably lost because there's probably no blood down there. But again, they need this to happen for plot. What Natasha and Yelena have done instead is hopped into the overhead vent platform. And this is where we get some more of the story of Budapest. By the way, we learned how to say Budapest. It's not Budapest, it's Budapest. And they make a big point of pointing that out. So we'll try to say it right here. Budapest. Whoops, sorry. So it turns out that Widow's last mission, or her induction into S.H.I.E.L.D., I should say, maybe, required kind of a leap of faith in which she had to remove Dreykov, the leader of the Red Room. So that was the Budapest mission that her and Clinton were on. In telling Yelena the story of this mission, while they're actually hiding out in this ducting, waiting for Taskmaster to go away, we find out that her mission was to kill Dreykov, and Hawkeye helped her. But the way she went about it is she was surveilling Dreykov's office, and to make sure that Dreykov was present, she waited for Dreykov's daughter to show up, knowing that Dreykov wouldn't be there, or his daughter wouldn't be there if Dreykov wasn't there. So we follow the daughter. What's the daughter's name? I think Antonia. I think, pretty sure. So they wait till Antonia shows up, and then she radios to Clint to detonate the bomb that's in the office and blows up the office. Now, jump into the future, we find out later, of course, that she wasn't successful. She severely injured the child, and Dreykov is still alive. So that's the big bad for the show, is Dreykov. Well, that's the arm, right? That's her arm. This is the hair. This is where our ponytail is. Ladies and gentlemen, don't try to drink or don't try to draw when you're super tired. Not good. I'm surprised anybody's still watching, because I must be just sounding like a rambling idiot. I guess that's probably how I sound most of the time when I sing. More so now than usual. So they're hiding out in the ducting, waiting for Taskmaster to leave, and like I said, Natasha's telling Yelena a story about how she had to kill Antonia, Dreykov's daughter, because she was collateral, but she had to make sure that Dreykov was there, so that's why she ended up killing Antonia, thinking she killed Antonia. And that's when Yelena kind of breaks it to her that, you didn't kill her, the Red Room's still around, and you failed. So, curve that and we'll fix it later. I'm not going to put too much work into this because I'm messing it up already. I do like the idea, though, and I'll probably redo this when I'm more aware of what I'm doing. It's got to be a lesson. You can't all be winners, folks. Behind every piece of good art, there's 100 pieces of bad art. So sometimes you have to just let it go. Keep moving forward. So Natasha is understandably stunned by the revelation that she failed and the Red Room's still around. She lived the last couple of decades thinking she'd killed Dreykov and ended the Red Room, and then she finds out not only did she not end the Red Room, but her sister, for lack of a better word, the person she knows of as a sister, was part of this program. She thought that Yelena had gotten out, and because she thought she destroyed the Red Room. She thought Yelena had moved on with her life. Obviously, that's not the case. Okay, now that I'm just doing the sketching, it's much more freeing not to be worried about being so exact. I can just kind of get the idea down, almost like I was just sketching with pencil again. I don't feel as concerned about trying to get it right. I am just getting ideas in. So once they actually climb up out of the ducting and move on and try and figure out what they're going to do next, they decide to go finish the job that Natasha started and kill Dreykov. Even though it's they don't know where he's at. He's got an army of widows. And he can control their minds. There's actually one scene where the widows were chasing him, where one has fallen and crippled herself, and they show her killing herself at the direction of Dreykov, who's controlling her. She's like, I don't want to do this, but she still uses the widow stun things to shoot herself in the face. So it's more proof that Dreykov's not a good guy, right? So they contact Mason, the man who isn't really named, but unless you want to look him up in the credits. And he, I guess she had apparently asked Mason to get her a jet so she could fly to a Russian gulag and free Alexei, because she figures Alexei would know where the Red Room is, because he was Dreykov's right-hand man back in the day as the Red Guardian. Trying to think. This is just basically a 45, so. And when I redo this, I'll actually look at the pistol or get better reference. And I've drawn a few pistols in my time, but it's not. I'm not a pistol expert by any means. This is where the guard is, and the trigger. You should have got the thumb in there somewhere. I like the idea. We'll clean it up. I'll just scratch and scratch condition random sketches. I do have some character references I can look at. So anyway, the mission, Mason gets them some widow gear, some white widow gear, like snow gear, and we go to free Alexei from his prison cell. And this is where Dave Harbour comes in as Alexei again. As he's in jail. I don't know. This is one of the things they really don't highlight, why he's in jail, because he was, the villain's right hand man. Um, so I don't know why he was in jail. Yes, because he knew too much, maybe, or But he's a Russian super soldier, so he's like kind of like the Russian version of Captain America. So he's got strength and more. He's more durable than the average guy. So putting him in like a Gen Pop prison with like normal prisoners seems like a bad idea. But this is one of those plot conveniences. We need Alexei to be in prison, so he's going to be in prison. You kind of sometimes you roll with the choices the writers make, and sometimes you rail against them. And it's like, well, I don't really understand why he's in jail, but okay, we'll just roll with this one. I'm going to go back to One Room for a second, because there was a decision they made that it was hard for me to roll with, and that was like Steve Trevor inhabiting some rando dude's body. They didn't have to write it that way, but they did. And that was just hard to wrap my head around. They just borrowed this rando dude's body. So sometimes you roll with them, sometimes you can't. And it's like, okay, well, Alexei needs to be in prison because they will need to break him out. And okay. It seems like a weird choice, but I guess it works. Red Star. Kind of was the parody or caricature of Red Guardian. So they're successful in breaking them out, but in the process, they managed to cause an avalanche, basically destroying the entire prison. So here is Black Widow causing another international incident, but that's not covered in the story because that's not the purpose of the movie. And if it sounds like I'm shitting on the movie, I'm not. I really did enjoy it. I mean, it's a fun ride. But as a functioning adult, there's definitely stuff in there that just makes you go, well, that doesn't make any sense. They break them out. They're in the helicopter, and this is where the MCU humor comes in. Alexei kind of just rolls into it. He's like, "Oh, my girls, my daughters," and they haven't seen this guy in over 20 years, and he wasn't the greatest father figure. At least it didn't seem that way to begin with. A little bigger than he actually is. You break him out, and we were saying about the humor. He starts talking to him like no time has passed, and he's your dad, and they're not having it. But one of the things, and this was one of the things I found out in the movie, was because the girls are giving him very kind of brusque, cold shoulder attitudes, like ask, "Are you on your period?" Which, on the face of it, is just a horrendous thing to say, which it is. But it kind of goes into this. Well, that's who this guy is. He's not the sharpest tool in the toolbox, and he doesn't understand tact. And he's kind of from a different time period. And I'm old enough to be from that time period, unfortunately. So this whole attitude of boys will be boys, and that's kind of where they take Alexei. boys will be boys. But here's the reality, folks. That's BS. Boys will be what you teach them to be. So, Alexi was being what he was taught to be. Just take that as you will. Um, if you allow boys to be assholes, well, guess what? They'll be assholes. Star needs to, the text needs to come from the base of the star. So we'll just extend the star. Star out of this. So don't ever, anybody ever tells you boys will be boys, don't accept that. Boys will be what you teach them to be. Like most people, they'll get away with whatever you allow them to get away with. Trying to block in dark areas so I know where I'm at. Star has some dimension to it. So do that. And this should be dark. So anyway, they managed to break Alexei out of the gulag, the Russian prison. Again, they destroyed the prison in the process. So, when they say Marvel doesn't kill people, that's a lie. They just kill people off screen. So I'm sure some of those guards just were good family men, just doing their job. Granted, some of the guards were shown to be assholes, but not, did they deserve that? I don't know. That's the implication. Let's do some character sketches as we talk. But so Yelena's like, when he asks her, "Are you on your period?" Yelena says, "I don't have periods, dipshit," and it explains how the Red Room, took out all their reproductive organs, and very nonchalant and blasé about how she's telling him, and he's doing the typical guy things like, "Oh, there's no need to be gross about it." So, but I think it's actually a good, when the writer told the director, he wanted to have that scene in there, they were all kind of appalled. But then he's explaining, this is where you show Red Guardian's growth. He's a callous idiot at this point, and as we go through the movie, you see that he grows a little bit and learns not to talk when he should. There is some hope for the character. But yeah, the whole scene, David Harbour gets some good laughs in there, some ironic comedy kind of. He's trying to give his girls a pep talk. It's like talking about you killed so many people. You have so much red in your ledger. And that's really not what they want to hear. That's not what they want to be known for. So even when he's trying to be helpful, he's not good at it. Bumbling idiot kind of all the way around. But he has to admit to them that he doesn't know where the Red Room is, but he does know somebody that might. and that happens to be Melina, the girl's quasi mother, from the other half of the spy operation in Ohio. And that's played by Rachel Weisz. Rachel Weisz? Rachel Weisz. I always want to mess up her name. And she was apparently more involved with the program than Fred Gardner ever was, because she was like a scientist. She was the brains of the operation. So that's the scene you see in the trailers, is the reuniting family scene. And that's where Yelena comes up with the line, don't say that, it was real to me, when they're all three of the others are kind of dismissing the family construct, and it wasn't real, and you can't really use that term family. And, Natasha saying you weren't my sister, and it's like, well, don't say that, it was real to me, and I can relate to that, And again, because I'm adopted, I can relate to that line. It's real to me, Like, one of the things being adopted, people always want to ask you, don't you know who your real parents are? And it's like, well, they're the people that raised me. That's real to me. The Cannons were my real family. They're the ones that raised me. So I completely get that sentiment of it was real to me. But the other thing for her is, right, because she went into the Red Room when she was 6. So that family paradigm or family construct that they had as spies ended up being the only family experience she ever had. Other than that, it was all in the Red Room and training. So you could feel that, even though it was only 3 years, and it was like, from 3 to 6 years old for her, it's the only family experience she had, and the only parental figure she had in her life. Everything else was training or indoctrination. So when they're all throwing about that it wasn't real, you feel for her, and you can see as they're having the conversation, you can see the pained looks on her face as she's following this, going, wait, this was real. What do you mean? And this is one of the things with the Black Widow movie that I'm glad they did, and something that I've been really enjoying about the Disney Plus shows is they get a lot of chance to do some real character building, real character development. So I think, even 5 years ago, the Marvel movies would not have had this sit-down scene dinner, that the Black Widow and her family are having. So I think that's a testament to where Marvel is kind of starting to trust the directors and the storytellers. It doesn't have to be wall-to-wall action. It doesn't have to be wall-to-wall jokes. You can have those character-building moments. They're obviously doing it in the television side, the Disney Plus side, because they have the time and leisure to do that. But I was very, very happy to see it done in the movie. More so than has been done in the past. And I know people give Scarlett Johansson shit for some of the roles and choices she's made in other movies. But whether you like her or not, I think you have to admit that she's a good actress. Even if you don't like her as a person or whatever, she's a good actress. If you go watch like Jojo Rabbit and see her as the mother in Jojo Rabbit, and if you've seen that movie, there's a scene where she, one moment she's kind of playfully playing with her son, and then he says something, and then she just snaps, and that's when you look at it going, she really sells that. She, living in wartime Germany. Sorry, different movie, but I'm just trying to get across it. Whether you love her or hate her, I don't think you can take away that she's a good actress. And then, when you surround her with these other actors, Florence Pugh does a fantastic job playing her sister. And Rachel Weisz. Rachel Weisz's character is amazing to me, too, because she's a sociopath. I don't mean a psychopath. I mean a sociopath. Like, she is just disconnected from her emotions. She's like pure logic. you know, and it's interesting to watch that character, you know, um, and that's why she was involved with the science side of the Red Room. In fact, helping to develop the toxins and stuff that reprogram and make them unable to break conditioning. Um, and that's another kind of really dark adult area that Marvel still dives into, and I was pleasantly surprised. Um, but there's all these family dynamics that you see, even though they were a family unit for 3 years. When you catch up to them 22 years later, you see each of them falling into the roles again, and that's something you see with a lot of stuff. Like, I'm sure all of you have like childhood friends or high school friends or anything like that, or maybe it's your family that you don't keep in constant contact with, but as soon as you meet up with them, you just fall into the roles that you had before, and they do a good job showing that in this one dinner scene with the Black Widow, Yelena, Alexei, and Natasha. Um, but anyway, as the dinner goes on, um, they kind of break up because Yelena's upset that everybody's talking about the family like it wasn't real, and even though it was real to her. And she goes off to be alone and drink. And Alexei, even though he's not good at it, goes to console her. Shoot, I'm going to paint it. That's my reference. Have that flyer. And while Alexei and Yelena are in one room, Natasha and Melina continue talking. And you know, you get to see some of the layered emotion in Melina's characters, like, because she was raised in the Red Room too. You find out she was cycled through the Red Room 4 times before the mission where she was posing as the girl's mother in Ohio. So she's actually widow trained herself, even though she's on the science side. Um, Chin's broad. Yeah, it's a really off night, folks. Party yard. But you can see there's some flashes of humanity, even though she's a sociopath. She's really detached from her emotions. She has kept like a scrapbook of their time together, even the fake photos of the girls celebrating Christmas and stuff like that. And she asked Natasha how Natasha had kept her heart. Like, how did she not, succumb to the life she was handed with, being a widow in the Red Room. And it's like, turns out that, the 3 years that they spent together as a family did have an impact. And some of the lessons that Melina imparted onto her as a child, were things that helped her get through everything. So that was kind of a nice revelation. But again, she's a sociopath and a victim of her circumstances. So she tells Natasha that she has contacted the Red Room and they'll be there in a minute. But there's a scene that is revealed later in the show that they have devised a way to get everybody into the compound and get the information they need to stop Dreykov. And you don't see that until later on. But what ends up in the short term is Melina posing as Natasha with that face-changing technology that you see in like Winter Soldier, and if you're an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, you'll have seen that in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. too. So that when the Red Room shows up and they tranquilize Red Guardian and Melina, aka Natasha in disguise, stuns Yelena. So when they come, Natasha is posing as Yelena when they take everybody up to the Red Room, which turns out to be like a Russian version of a helicarrier. And then, hey. Ron, you actually paying attention? I know I'm just rambling. I'm really tired. My brain is frazzled from the week. But thanks. I'll keep going. So anyway, they take everybody up, and Dreykov's plan is to try and find out how Yelena was freed. So he's gonna have his doctors like remove her brain and find out how it was affected. Natasha in disguise as Melina meets up with Dreykov in his chambers, and Alexei and Melina, as disguised as Natasha, are taken to a holding cell where I don't know what they plan to do with them because they're evil people. I guess Dreykov would like to get Black Widow under his control, to have an Avenger in his collection. I guess would be a coup for him. Ron, if you ever want to watch it, let me know. I'll throw it on stream and we can watch it. I won't broadcast it, folks. So those of you, anybody else watching, I'm not going to do that. Stream it for one or two people. I just won't broadcast it live. So Natasha in disguise as Melina is talking to Dreykov, and it quickly becomes apparent that Dreykov knows that he's talking to Natasha, and he actually exposes it. What am I forgetting here? And then Taskmaster's in the room with them, so Natasha really can't do anything because Taskmaster, will be able to thwart her. But this is where it becomes a nice throwback to like if you watch Black Widow in the Avengers movie, there's a scene where she's interrogating a Russian general, but she's tied to a chair and they're beating her, and that's her interrogation technique. She's getting all the information. She's getting them to give her all the information. Well, this whole scene with Dreykov turns out to be a very nice throwback to that because she gets Dreykov to basically give her all the information on how the operation works and the program works. But the twist here is Dreykov has now this is where the science gets weak, and again, this is where you just have to roll with it for plot. Science-wise, it really doesn't make sense. But apparently, Dreykov gives off a pheromone that prevents anybody from causing him physical harm. And this is where you get the cutscene back to the dinner, the family dinner, when after Melina had said that she contacted the Red Room and they're on the way. So it kind of shows her and Widow devising a plan for how everything works. So part of the revelation is about this pheromone, and the only way to prevent the pheromone from working is to sever the sensory nerve in the nose. As long as you can smell them, you can't just hold your breath. It doesn't work like that. That's basic science according to Melina, but okay. This whole thing is kind of basic science. I don't know if I buy that answer. But again, plot. Because plot. So once she gets Dreykov to, show her everything works, show her where the controls are at, she goads him into like punching her, hoping that he'll sever her nerve for her, but he's not able to do that. But it's nice once you see the flip when he's revealed all his plans and how everything works. Till she flips back to that Natasha from the Avengers, and she like starts smiling, thanking him for his cooperation. It's like, I don't understand, And then to sever her nerve, she like slams her nose against the desk, and then she starts kicking his ass. And it's interesting. Like I said, the science. I don't know if the science works, but you buy it for the plot. One of the nice touches, though, that if you pay close attention to that fight scene, after she smashes her head into the desk, they do, keep her nose bent, until she pops it back into place later on after the fight is over. And, Dreykov is. I'm not really crazy about Dreykov as a villain because he's very mustache twirly. He's just evil to be evil. Like going to control the world and through his widows and stuff like that. I don't know. He's not a great villain to me. And I have jokingly said that the Black Widow is the movie that answers the question: what if Harvey Weinstein was in control of a Russian spy agency? Because the character of Dreykov reminds me very much of a Weinstein type, Harvey Weinstein, if you're not familiar with that movie producer that, raped and harassed, female actors, pressured them into sexual situations. And this is one of the things I was thinking of as I was watching this. It's like, okay, so this guy Dreykov has complete bodily control of these widows. And I'm just thinking, that slimy bastard, didn't just use them for assassinations and stuff like that. You know that if this were a real thing, that guy would be diddling some of the widows. But after she kicks his ass enough, he manages to page the widows that are in training in the Red Room to come take care of Natasha. In the meantime, Melina and Alexei and Elena are trying to do their part for the mission. Melina's trying to take down this helicarrier equivalent Red Room building, because she helped design a lot of it. So she's like trying to take engines offline and send it into a controlled emergency landing. And Elena's trying to find the mist that was confiscated from them so she can free her other widows. Counter agent that breaks their conditioning, and Alexei is being Alexei, just looking for something to punch. So he ends up fighting Taskmaster while Um, the widows are beating the Red Room widows are kicking Scarlett Johansson's ass because they outnumber her and they're all trained like her. Until Yelena catches up with them, and she's got like all these canisters of mist, and she wraps them around her grenade, around like rubber bands or something around the grenade, and then throws a grenade over all the widows that are kicking Natasha's ass. And the mist explodes, and they're all free from their control. And this is again one of those because plot, right? So there's this like a bundle of canisters around her grenade, and that's what explodes to release the powder. But magically, at the end of the fight, when Widow has to escape the helicarrier as it's falling out of the sky, there's still two of those canisters left that didn't get exploded by the grenade. It's like, okay, I don't buy it, but okay. This is why sometimes it's hard to watch shows as an adult because you can't turn off your adult brain sometimes. But again, I'm not bashing on the movie. I liked it, but it's just there's some really, really heavy plot conveniences that will just go, well, that doesn't work, but okay. That's not how any of this works. Melina was trying to make the helicarrier crash, or not crash, but do a controlled emergency landing, and then Dreykov saw that she was doing that and cut off her controls and restores everything to normal. So her plan B is to destroy one of the Red Room helicarrier's engines, so it actually goes into a controlled crash. And it's not a controlled crash. Although the thing does take a long time to fall apart and fall out of the sky. And that's some of the sequences you see in the trailer where like Widow's falling through debris and Taskmaster's following after. But now here's the twist in this whole thing: is Taskmaster, and this is I know hardcore comic fans, or especially fans of the Taskmaster, just lost their damn minds because Taskmaster in the movie turns out to be Dreykov's daughter that Natasha thought she had blown up. And, she didn't. But in order to save her, Dreykov put a chip in her head or her neck that restored her bodily functions, and gave her this suit of armor. It's obviously augmented and unlocked her mimic abilities and turned her into a weapon. Like I said, hardcore fanboys just lost their damn minds on the internet. I get it. I mean, there's been characters that I've been invested in that when the movie or television show doesn't portray them how I feel they should, it's just hard for me to get past that. So that's your own baggage going in, though. I don't have that kind of baggage of Taskmaster. He was always kind of a secondary character, tertiary character in the story. He's, a mercenary, not a real in-depth character from my experience. Now, I stopped reading comics maybe 25, 30 years ago when I got married. So my currency isn't up to snuff. I just recently started reading comics again in the last couple of years. I always kept up with the movies, and I would follow the trades, so I would have some idea of what's going on, but I didn't read all the stories. So if they did some kind of real in-depth study of Taskmaster in the last 20 years, I don't know about it. So I was fine with the decisions they made on changing the character in the movie. And I think for the movie and for the MCU, it gives more weight to the character rather than just having some mustache-twirly mercenary with this mimic ability. Now this character has a tie to Natasha and to Yelena by association. So I was fine with the twist. But once in the process of the Red Room crashing, Yelena destroys the jet that Dreykov was trying to escape on, so she managed to kill Dreykov, but in the process she, gets sent flying through the air, so Natasha jumps after her with a parachute, and Again, there's happened to be a parachute laying on the deck where she needed it. Block conveniences. That's not how shit works. I get it. She jumps down and catches up with Yelena and straps a parachute on her, and of course she's being chased by Taskmaster, so she pushes Yelena away and she deals with Taskmaster, and Taskmaster has a parachute too. So while they're fighting, Taskmaster, and I can start saying she now because now that we know Taskmaster, Taskmaster uses her parachute. You know, although the landing, Taskmaster uses the parachute kind of at the last possible second, so the landing isn't graceful. By the way, this is what Taskmaster looks like, having her face having been reconstructed after the explosion as a child. But so they land on the ground, and Taskmaster's still ready to fight. And during the fight, Natasha managed to expose Taskmaster to that counter agent, so she's free to control. And like the first thing she says is he dead? So even though Natasha is the one that blew her up as a child, her main concern was the decades of abuse that she's had at this man's hands. So she's happy to be relieved, even if it's by the person that blew her up in the first place. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. I mean, you get General Ross shows up to come take Natasha away, and then they jump 2 weeks later, and Natasha's not in his custody, so he just accepted Natasha can do whatever she wants at this point. She's a badass. The freed widows and Yelena and Melina and Lexi and Taskmaster, they fly off to presumably try and track down the other widows that are still around the world that haven't been freed yet. And we got to develop more counter agents because there's only one vial left now because there was two that Natasha grabbed out of the Red Room after dealing with Dreykov. And she used one on Taskmaster, so at least one vial, but she did download the data from Dreykov's computer, so they know where all the other agents are at. So I don't know if this will be another series or another show or another movie, or whether they'll just maybe a throwaway line in a future show, with the Yelena having freed all the other people. But that's something they could explore later, is developing this agent and then going to free the rest of the agents. And now you've got an army of highly trained female assassins and spies. And I can't imagine they're all going to wind up being good. So we may be dealing with, fallout from the Red Room for a while. And that's what I kind of want to talk about. This movie is 5 or 6 years or 4 or 5 years later than it should have been. And we already know Natasha's dead. So it's like, well, what impact does this have on the MCU going forward? And I think it has more impact than people want to think. If you've been watching the shows, the Disney Plus shows, you can see that they're already setting up the next phase, and they're introducing characters that will carry us forward into the MCU. So, like in Scarlet WandaVision, we get Wiccan and Speed, her kids. Granted, they disappear at the end of that series, but you obviously see in the final episode that she's going to figure out a way to get her kids back from whatever dimension they came from. So Wiccan and Speed are Young Avengers. And then we jump to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and we meet Isaiah Bradley and his nephew, who is Patriot, another Young Avenger. Okay. And then you get Loki. And Loki is setting up the Multiverse of Madness. I'm sure you've all heard that title now. Loki's setting up that Multiverse of Madness. So that leads us into Doctor Strange and quite possibly the Spider-Man movie. In fact, I've been postulating that give people the weekend to catch up on the Loki series and the reveal of what happens in that show, and then I think next week you'll probably see the first trailer for Spider-Man and maybe even Doctor Strange, because I think what happens in the Loki series is a direct lineup for what happens in Doctor Strange and probably Spider-Man. So don't be surprised if you see trailers for those coming soon. So in Wanda, we get Yelena, the White Widow, or the new Black Widow, depending where they want to go. And the stinger at the end of Black Widow shows us Valentina. I'm not going to try and remember her whole name, but she was also in the Falcon and Winter Soldier, where she recruits U.S. agent to be part of whatever team she's setting up. So we have, not only do we have these shows setting up Young Avengers, but it looks like Valentina is setting up either the Dark Avengers or the Thunderbolts. And I'm inclined to go with the Thunderbolts from the comics, because we have General Thunderbolt Ross running around. And so we have Yelena that can be on the Thunderbolts, and we also have this Taskmaster that can be used on the Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers too. So I don't think Black Widow has no impact on the MCU going forward. I think we're going to see obviously Yelena again. I'd be willing to bet we see Natasha again, or not Natasha, but Antonia again. Because again, they cast this actor who's actually fairly well known. I can't remember her name myself, but I know she's well known. And they were surprised when she was the Taskmaster. I was like, well, if you're gonna do that, then maybe they have more use for her in the future. And obviously Valentina, that's the character that Julia Louis-Dreyfus plays. You're gonna see her again because she's setting things up. She's doing like Nick Fury in the Phase 1. She's recruiting people for this. Whatever it is, So in the stinger for Black Widow, you see that she's recruited. She's already recruited Yelena. From the stinger, they've been working together for a bit, and then they set up a tease into the Hawkeye series, because the stinger has Valentina giving Yelena her next mission, which is getting revenge on the person that quote unquote killed Natasha, which happens to be Hawkeye, right? Although I don't think that mission's gonna lead the way that they set it up in the stinger, because a 5-minute talk and she'll figure out that Clint and Natasha were best friends, and he didn't kill her. He couldn't stop her from killing herself. That's not the same thing. But it'll be interesting to see if she does kill Clint. That'd be a heck of a revelation. I know, but the Hawkeye series is going to be Hawkeye training his daughter, which is another young Avenger. That's where Black Widow takes us. Let me look at my notes real quick and see if I talked about everything I wanted to. Some of the Easter eggs and stuff you see. There's a line in the movie where they were raising the kids in Ohio, Natasha and Yelena, and when they're getting ready to take the girls away in Cuba, Natasha says, "I want to stay in Ohio." So the stinger, when they show Natasha's gravesite, it's in a grave in Ohio, so she gets to stay in Ohio. As a kid, Yelena liked to listen to American Pie by who's saying American Pie? Bye bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. And the old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing this will be the day that I die. Why can't I remember his name? I know the song. Not, not from Croce, it's not Harry Chapin. Don McLean. So anyway, so one of Elena's favorite songs as a kid was um, American Pie. And when in the family scene where Elena's pissed off, she goes off to like be by herself, and Lexi comes in there. He sings that song to her, and it's one of these fun. If you watch a lot of the interview shows and stuff, David Harbour, who plays Alexi, said, "Hey, told the director, I want to sing her a song," and like the director, because this wasn't written into the script. This was David Harbour's idea to sing her, her childhood, her favorite childhood song, and she, Kevin Feige says, "Yeah, I got a call from the director and says, yeah, David wants to sing a song," and it's funny because like, well, are we going to make the daily requirements for filming? He's like, yeah. Well, yeah, I guess go ahead. I mean, we can always cut it out if it doesn't work. And so that film in the scene was a call by David Harbour, and it ends up being one of the more poignant scenes of the movie, because even as crappy as a father as he was, he wasn't good at this. In the clutch, he remembers that, hey, this is something she liked, and he's able to connect with her on that because he's not singing it well, but he sings a song to her to remind her, hey, I may not have been great, but I really was paying attention, kind of thing, And, so just in overall thoughts and stuff, it's I did enjoy the movie. I bagged on some of the plot conveniences. It just as an adult, it's hard to watch and not think they could have done something better. But it's not a bad movie by any means. It's a very enjoyable movie. Um, it's a good Black Widow movie. One of the things again, like I enjoyed, is they allowed some of those slower moments, some of the more character building moments. Uh, it's not all action, and that's one of the things I think again from the shows, they've been doing that in the shows, and I think that's from the looks of it, they're going to allow directors to have a bit more leeway to actually build character, and I like that. Like I said, I think 5 years ago in the MCU, even they wouldn't have allowed a director to, if a director said, "Hey, I want to have a scene where we're just going to have these guys sitting down for 10 minutes around the table, reconnecting as a family," and I think they probably would have been shot down. It's like, what? We need to keep the action going. It's like, no, trust me, it's going to work. We need to build these characters. And I'm glad to see that the MCU is allowing this character growth even in the movies. And it's harder to do in a movie because you only got 2 hours, hour and a half, or whatever, however long you're editing it for. In a TV show, it's easier because you're looking at 6 hours or 10 hours or however long. You have more runway to work with as far as developing characters. But the fact that they're allowing it to happen in the live action movies too is heartening for me. Because I love the action and I love the superhero stuff, but you wanna be invested in the characters you're watching. You can't do that if you don't give them some room to breathe. Um, and I really think they did that with Black Widow. They allowed the character some room to breathe, and for all the characters, not just Black Widow, but Yelena and Alexei and Lena. And Alexei is kind of a superficial doofus, but you find yourself like he's not a good guy. I mean, he's a product of a different generation, and He has no tact. But at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing more of this character. And Melina, like I said, she's a straight up sociopath. She's detached from her emotions, but uh, again, I think when you walk away at the end of the movie, you're like, I wouldn't mind seeing. But and it's Rachel Weisz, and she's a great actress. So um, you know, even though the character she's portraying is kind of devoid of emotions, um, she sells it. So like, and you'd also kind of like to see some redemption for her character. It's like, she was raised in the Red Room. That's the only life she knew, and but in a clutch, when it came time, she helped probably the only family she'll have ever known, other than Yelena talks about that being the only family she ever knew. I think that's true for all of the characters. I don't think Melina will ever have another family. I mean, other than the pig she's experimenting on, um, I don't think they're great conversations. So you have all that kind of stuff going on. Um, oh, doing random sketches. I do still want to redraw this. I like the idea. I just didn't execute tonight, and I apologize for that. My brain is not working. Um, I will be interested to see if going forward they do address the other widows that are still out there. Because in the scene where Dracov's revealing everything, it doesn't look like there's a handful. It looks like he's got hundreds of these controlled people out there. Because there's just like, he has like the world map where like dots are where they're all located. And there's dots everywhere. I suppose I could do a freeze frame and count them up, but it's not a handful of people. So he has fingers in every government in the world, it looked like. And, so it'd be nice to see if they address some of that. Like I said, I can't imagine that all those widows, once they're freed, will be good people. But you have an army of trained assassins out there, so it would be a shame not to at least pull that string sometime in the future. Maybe for something. Maybe when they do, if they do sword and something, they need agents for that. Or you've got what did Sharon Carter's character end up being called in Falcon and the Winter Soldier? But where she's obviously not on the side of goodness and light anymore. She's always the power broker. So maybe the power broker would have use for highly trained female assassins and spies. So I can imagine, and one of the nice things, people rag on, the wokeness of Marvel and the diversity and stuff, but I enjoy seeing that stuff myself. And the widows were no exception. And when you see the widows, they're across the racial spectrum. There's black widows and Asian widows, and Hispanic widows and white widows. And it'd be interesting to see, there's another group of really fierce women fighters in the MCU already, the Dora Milaje in Wakanda. And I wonder, if particularly some of the black widows would want to, the black widows, I don't know, would wind up there, because they're already trained. You just got to get them the right loyalties and stuff. It'd be interesting to watch going forward. So I did see Black Widow in the theater. I took my kids to see it, and I also watched it twice on Disney Plus. And like I said, Ron, if you're still watching, contact me. I can watch Black Widow one more time if you want to. So, but even though it's 4 or 5 years late, and you know, it's debatable how much impact it will have on the MCU going forward, and obviously it's this version of the Black Widow's swan song, apparently. And I say apparently because, you know, you never know. You throw enough money at Scarlett Johansson, maybe they can figure out a way to bring her back. And we just introduced a whole multiverse thing going on in the MCU, so this is Marvel's get out of jail free card. They can do anything they really want now because they have a multiverse. If a character dies, they could recast it. They could bring it back. You know, this is the Captain America from Earth 95 or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see. And like I said, even if you don't like Scarlett Johansson, I think you have to admit she's a great actress, or at least a good actress. Even some of the roles she plays, like what she did in Ghost in the Shell. People ragged on that mainly because, you know, it was a white girl playing an ostensibly Asian role, but she made some weird choices in that. She played Makoto very robotic, but then if you go back and watch the movie, Makoto's not a super emotional person. So I don't know. Anyway, I think we're going to wrap up. You know, thanks for watching. I will be doing a Loki stream on Sunday. So if you got thoughts about Loki, you know, you want to come talk about that. Hopefully, I'll catch up on some sleep. And we can talk and draw about Loki and what happened in Loki season 1, first season, which is a spoiler in and of itself. Because when I say season 1, that implies there's a season 2. So here's what it is. But Black Widow, I would recommend it. If you're a huge Taskmaster fan, just be prepared to not have the Taskmaster from the comics, but I think it's a good rendition of Taskmaster. If you're a Red Guardian fan of the comics, well, this is, I don't know if is there such thing? Are there big Red Guardian fans? It's not the Red Guardians in the comic. There is. There's something that I speculate because Red Guardian, you know, while he's in prison, he's like telling other inmates about his encounters with Captain America. You know, it would have been around the mid '80s, early '80s, which means Captain America was still on ice. So one of the funny things I was speculating is, what if he actually did run into Captain America? Everybody thinks he's lying, but what if he actually did run into Captain America? Because now we have these multiverses. What if Captain America from another timeline, he was fighting that guy? So these are fun things to think about. We'll never get the answer to that probably, but it's fun to think about. The whole Budapest story, you know, what was a throwaway line in Civil War, like you and I remember Budapest very differently. You get more of the story, but if you were expecting this movie to be, you know, that story, it's not it. I mean, they do address it, but it's more in conversation. It's like, you know, they talk about how she had to attempt to kill Dreykov, and how she attempted to kill the daughter in the process, and how her and Clint had to hide out in a vent duct for, I think, 8 days while everything calmed down before they could get out of Budapest without, you know, attracting half the Turkish army. Or Hungarian army. So this isn't the story of Budapest, even though it's, you know, talked about. So if you're expecting that, I don't know. Maybe that's something we can get later on. Like I said, if they throw enough money at Scarlet, maybe she'll come back and reprise her role. Or maybe it's a multiverse thing and they just cast somebody else. But anyway, like I said, Sunday I'll be talking about Loki, and hopefully I'll be more awake, a little more into it. Middle of refinancing my house to bring the payments down, so wish me luck on that. I'm probably about 70% of the way through that process. I've got a couple commissions to work on for a podcast. It's been very nice to throw me work over the last year or two. I've got a couple more comics to work on for comic book covers for Cancer. So I'll probably do streams of those, the 2 covers I have left of them in the next week or 2. So one's a Aliens cover, and one is Zombie Tramp, Zombie Tramp. I think. I got those two covers to do. Like I said, I'm trying to stream at least once a week, but it's harder now that things are returning to normal in the pandemic life. So I am back to work full time. I have, I live about an hour away from where I work, so I have 2 hours on the road every day, depending on traffic. I am trying, and then I still got yard work I got to do. I'm trying to be fairly consistent, and I know today probably wasn't great quality. I'm sorry, I'm tired, and just being worn out. For those of you who actually struggle through this and listen, thank you. And Ron, you're always welcome to jump in here, man. You've got a standing invitation, Ron, anytime. Just, if the link isn't in the stream, just message me. I'll send it to you. Anyway, y'all have a good night. Aloha.